The Carl B. Phillips Show.
Hosted by me, Carl B. Phillips, Uncle Carl.
The Carl B. Phillips Show.
Get ready for another great conversation on the Carl B. Phillips Show. Welcome to the Carl B. Phillips Show. I am Carl B. Phillips, Uncle Carl. Today's guest is an American singer, songwriter, musician, actor, entrepreneur, and teacher. He is most known for being the founder and member of the international award-winning and chart-topping group BGA. Please help me welcome Branden Anderson. What's up, man?
What's up, Carl? How you doing?
I'm doing good. Ooh, I read all that in one breath. Now I'm tired. Now, as I told you, I'm going to ask a couple of random questions. First random question. What was the first gospel concert you attended?
Oh, that's easy. I remember it. It was I don't know if it was called the New Nation Tour. That might be getting that confused with something else. But no, this was Kirk Franklin and the family, and it was Yolanda Adams and Fred Hammond on the same concert. I'll never forget it. It was around 97. Came through Richmond, Virginia, and that was my first concert, gospel concert.
Was that the Hopeville tour?
No, it wasn't Hopeville, because I remember that era too. But this was just more like the family. I want to say this was the family, Kirk Franklin and the family, and then Yolanda Adams was on there as well as Fred Hammond.
Wow. So you're bringing back great memories. Like I told you, I'm from Detroit, and I remember Kirk in town. And it was a concert that he was doing here, and Fred Hammond was the opening for him. And after that, Fred ended up going out on the road. It's like right before Pages of Life dropped. So, man, there's a lot of great memories when you talk about Fred. I remember Yolanda coming to town before she was famous, because, you know, Thomas Whitfield produced her first project. So, yeah. So just you bring back a lot of good memories when you talk about Fred, Yolanda, and of course, Kirk Franklin.
Yeah, I'll never forget the concert. It was just amazing because it was my first, I think that was my first concert really that I ever been to, but it was just my definitely first gospel concert. You know, of course, outside of, of course you have your gospel concerts you go to locally with churches and stuff. And I'm talking about a really production, and I was just like, wow, I'm sure it inspired me so much to like, maybe one day I could do that, or, it was just amazing.
Wow, sound like you had an awesome time. So in reading the bio, something that stuck out for me, you received a piano for Christmas at the age of 8. What did getting a piano for a gift mean to you?
I'll never forget it. It was this small keyboard, not big at all, but I just loved it. I was just, it was like everything, because as I often say in my interviews, my mom prayed when she was pregnant that I would have the gift of music. And around 8 years old, sure enough, I started maybe playing on the piano or tapping on it, maybe at church or something. And so my mom and my dad, they went on and gave me a keyboard for Christmas. And it was just amazing. And they always say that my first song that I played was Angels We Have Heard on High. And I'm telling you, it's just a testimony that God's word is true and is faithful, because and that prayer works, because she really did. My mom was a musician. She plays the piano. My dad was a singer, songwriter, and musician. And she prayed that I would have the gift of music. And sure enough, at 8 years old, it was manifested. And I just remember just playing the chords, and I would hear my mom play, and I would just play stuff that I heard her playing. And then, I began to branch out to hear other musicians and play that. And then it led to me being in the jazz band in middle school. But yeah, it all started with a keyboard at 8 years old.
Now, you mentioned Angels We Have Heard on High. Was that the traditional one, or was that the Kirk Franklin one?
It was the traditional one. Yeah, it was the traditional one, because I feel like Kirk's Christmas was like maybe 93, and this was around in the late 80s, like 87, 88 or something. But it was the traditional one, So
What are some of the other songs that you learned how to play at an early age?
So it's crazy because, I want to consider myself still young, but I'm not, I'm, in my early 40s now, but some songs surprisingly might, I remember these old songs because, I grew up in a country church. And
Okay.
so I remember learning songs like Won't It Be Grand. I don't even know if anybody remembers that song. I'm going home to live with Jesus, won't it be grand? Because I played for a male chorus. So like when I started playing at 8 years old, in a country church, everybody was like, oh, he can play. So I started playing for the youth choir, then I played for the male chorus. And the male chorus, they like to sing songs like, Trouble in My Way. Um, you know, um, what are some other songs that I used to play all the time? There's a Bright Side Somewhere.
There's a
Um,
big
you know,
side way.
yeah.
Oh, taking me back.
And yeah, Yes, Lord, from the bottom of my heart, rest in peace to Sandra Crouch. We did, songs like that. And it wasn't until my teenage years that I started getting introduced to um my teenage years is when I got introduced to more like contemporary music when Kirk came along.
Mhm.
And we were like, oh yeah, this is awesome. And so then I began to play more for like youth choirs. And then, we were all over Melodies from Heaven and, What You're Looking For, all that stuff, so, but those are just some of the songs that kind of got me started.
You mentioned your mom as a musician and your dad as a singer. Are there other people that influenced you on your spiritual and musical journey?
Absolutely. Like I said, I come from a musical family. So my grandmother, she was a singer. My grandfather was a singer. Um, More notable artists that people know, of course, the Canton Spirituals. They were a big influence in me forming my own group, actually. Um, you know, because when I was about 16 or 17, that's when I started getting the idea to form a male group, which a lot of people now know as GI, but it was the Canton Spirituals, but it was also Boys to Men. I didn't grow up in a strict home. So, thankfully we could listen to R&B, but it was funny because I never personally wanted to listen to a lot of, not too bad stuff, but, we could listen to stuff. So I could listen to Boys to Men or Men Condition, but also the Canton Spirituals. And all of those groups kind of created my palette for like harmony, and I loved harmony. I loved male harmony and just groups. So I was like, man, I want to create a group. I wanted to do a group, and that really inspired me, to want to do to begin to establish GI years ago. So
You mentioned Canton Spirituals. Harvey Watkins is one of the coolest singers you'll ever see in life.
yes, absolutely,
He's just
very
gonna
cool,
stand
man.
there. He's not gonna do a lot of sweating. He's gonna put his hat on and walk off the stage.
Man,
And
I
people
love it,
going
and I
crazy.
love quartet. Yeah, man, there's something about those quartet groups. I was on a concert last night, not for the first time. I saw the Mighty Clouds of Joy. Of course, rest in peace to Joe Lagan. I didn't get to experience him live, but it's funny because they sang a song and it was talking about like the same anointing that was they had back then. They still have, and I'm telling you, they really threw down like the Mighty Clouds of Joy. Like I was like, wow. I mean, I had never experienced them, but live, but I mean, I'm telling you, it's just, those groups, they're legendary. The Kansas Spirituals, the Mighty Clouds of Joy. So,
You got to keep Lee Williams in there.
oh, of course. Now everybody know Lee Williams. If he's the thing about Lee, he's legendary for just kind of standing there. Like he tear a song to pieces, but he's gonna do it all just standing there, like you're not gonna move too much. But I'm telling you that voice and the music that he contributed to gospel music, I mean, it's just, impeccable. So absolutely, he is definitely one of those artists that we have to remember. We still in church today, sometimes when the male chorus we'll sing, I've learned to lean, and depend on Jesus, So
Yes, sir. Yes. It's interesting. I don't know what it is like in your area, but in the Detroit area, we have a lot of young quartets coming up, quartet singers. Stellar Award winning Young Men for Christ with Frank McGee and those guys. There's a new quartet female group called Redeem. I've been seeing a lot about Bree Holly online. It's just a lot of young people that are now. I mean, we got the praise and worship, we got the urban contemporary, but there's some young people in Detroit that's going crazy over quartet music, young musicians that's be rocking quartet music. I don't know if it's like that in your area.
Wow. Not too much, I will say, I don't know if you ever heard of the Ingramettes. They're a local group, the legendary Ingramettes. Um, they are very key in this area and they keep quartet alive. But I love it when, because of course we know the quartet is not as forward centered these days, but I love it. And I'm glad that there's a generation that's kind of like saying, hey, wait a minute, this is hot, and they're keeping it alive. So
Oh, most definitely, man. Most definitely. Let's talk a little bit about your high school years. What was high school like
yeah,
for you?
high school for me, and it's funny, music has just always been such a big part. But I remember the very first kind of intro to high school for me was the summer camp marching band. So, I went to band camp, 100-degree weather, you know, um, I went to a high school, it was, predominantly African American. So, we when we did marching band, we had the high step, 90-degree angle, you know, one of the assistant drum majors, he was from Norfolk State University, which is a HBCU. And so, I mean, they really got us together to make sure that we were tight as a marching band. So for me, just being in band and then playing like for the chorus and traveling to like competitions, um, and just having fun as well, just your regular high school experiences, going to the prom or you know um hanging out with your friends or talent shows, or of course that's where I met my group members outside of my brother, of course, who obviously I grew up with. But high school, that was a special time.
Do you remember the theme song from your prom?
Woo. Now, I feel like I don't know why I feel like it was Casey and JoJo all my life. I feel like it might have been that. I don't know why. Maybe it was just a popular song back then and they might have played it a lot. But I feel like it was all my life. I could be wrong. I could definitely be wrong, but
Now, you also attended Elizabeth City State University on a full scholarship. What was your major in college?
yes. I was a music industry studies major, believe it or not. So I am blessed to be operating in my field. I'll never forget, I was in a program, the International Baccalaureate program in high school, which, it gets you ready for college. And that program takes a lot of work. And so, but I realized like, wait a minute, I'm about to graduate in like, a couple of weeks. And where am I really going? Because I got a lot of acceptance offers, but not really any scholarship money. But shout out to my choir teacher, um, Miss Cece. She somehow heard that one of the professors were in town or something, and she arranged an audition. And so Professor Billy C. Hines from Elizabeth City State at the time, he came to my high school and he auditioned me. I played a piece on the piano and I sang. Next thing I know, I got a full scholarship and I was driving down there like in a week or two to get everything together. And I was like, look at God. So when I walked across the stage, it was already prepared for me, a full scholarship to ECSU. So
Wow, now that's a blessing because a lot of people, they're waiting on Biden to pay them bills. So
yes, I know.
talk a little bit more about your degree and what that means with the degree that you have. What kind of what you're supposed to be able to do with that type of degree?
Yes. Well, of course, a lot of times you hear about people, they may go to school and they don't really end up in their field. But I just loved music. And after I formed GI high school, I was like, I really want to learn about music. I want to learn the business. I want to learn the contracts and what everything that goes with it. So they actually had a music industry studies program where you could major in either the business or the production side. So business meaning that you would study and almost kind of get almost like a business degree too, or you could go to production and you will learn the studio and you would pretty much come out being able to engineer. I actually started on the engineering and I switched to business because I was like, I think business is more what I'm going to be doing. And pretty much it's a degree that prepares and trains you and gives you all the knowledge that you need to kind of enter the music industry. It's pretty much a combination of a music major and a business major. You take your theory classes, all that good stuff. You got to do your performance in front of the musical jury, all those things. But you also take accounting, business law, study contracts and all that stuff. So when I graduated, I felt like, okay, I could really do this. And that's when I really established my record label, BGA Music Group, in 2023 and 2003. And that degree kind of gave me the confidence, knowledge to really do that and to begin to record on, our own label.
Now we're going to talk music in a little bit, but I'm going to ask another random question. Random question. And I hope this is your era. Would you rather be an Avenger or a Power Ranger?
I would have to say a Power Ranger. I don't know why, because I just felt like that was more me back then.
Okay, so if a Power Ranger, go to the
That
next
was more
question.
me.
What color Power Ranger?
Oh, what color?
Yeah, what color?
Oh, there was a blue one, right?
I believe so.
Yeah, I would say blue because it is my favorite color. Um, Probably blue.
Did you grow up watching the Power Rangers?
Oh yeah, I did. And I did the Power Rangers and some similar shows like that. But man, that just seems like so long ago.
Now, you talked a little bit about your degree. You talked about your school. You are the founder of BGA School of Music. What are some of your aspirations for
hmm
the school?
Um, Aspirations for the school is I want to have a place, which we do, praise the Lord, that people can come and learn, um, you know, a couple of things. One, if you want to learn how to play an instrument, okay, we can teach you how to play the piano, the drums, woodwind, be it saxophone or clarinet. Um, we can teach you, pretty much, we have teachers for everything, guitar. It's not just me, I have a staff. And what I love about my staff is that not only are they teachers, but this is actually their profession. So they are teaching during the week, and on the weekend, they are performing somewhere, or they are producing, or they are, you know, um, running sound, because this is what we do. And so it's been one of the greatest um, things for me to experience some of my students where they came to learn to sing, to have voice lessons, and to see one of our students on American Idol. It's
Wow.
like, wow, God, you trusted us with this, and for us to just be able to sow a seed and see them do that, or um, one of my students, Christian Bolar, who is right now in the runnings for a Stella Award for Youth Project of the Year. He came to us when he was 5 years old, and I just remember him running around and he was doing everything. He was playing the piano because we also had a summer camp,
Hmm.
years ago. And so when his parents put him into the summer camp, I saw him on the keyboard, just tapping at it, and he was doing some stuff. Then I heard him singing. I was like, oh, this guy can sing. But then he was also on the drums. So I was like, I know something's, in the future for him. And sure enough, he stuck with us and he perfected piano, guitar, drums. And then he said he wanted to record. And so now Christian Bolar, if you look him up, he has a couple of projects that he has recorded. And again, his latest project is called You Gotta Know Deluxe. It's in the runnings for Youth Project of the Year. So
I'm sure that has really inspired you to keep going and keep doing what you're doing. With your degree on the business side, do you ever share some of the business things with your students?
oh yes, like share, things that as far as like in the music industry.
Right.
Oh, absolutely. Yeah. Because some of our students have come to us and they're like, we're getting ready to record a project. And we're able to direct them and say, okay, well, make sure, that you have a couple of things, okay, you have lyrics, great. But of course, you need a producer. And some people may already know that. But then some people may not know, okay, do you have your budget in order? Because okay, you're thinking, okay, you just need a producer, and of course you need studio time, but who's going to mix it? And that's an expense. Make sure you have at least a decent contract between you and the producer, so that you can make sure you own your music, or you can know, well, what percentage that is he taking any publishing? Is he a work for hire? We had those conversations because it's a lot that goes into that. And then you have to get your song mastered. So yeah, we're able to, I would like to say we're able to help our students and avoid a lot of stuff that maybe a lot of us had to kind of take on, or kind of fumble with, but we can save them, and get them a step further. And so that's one of the great feelings that we like about the school too.
I think you bring up an interesting point, because not only like students, but I've run into indie artists or artists that were with labels before, where the label did everything, and they don't know nothing.
Yes.
Literally, 'cause so much has changed in the past few years, where you had to sit down
Mm,
and you had to explain, well, this is what publishing is about. This is what mastering is for. This is what you need to have mixed. Again, the work for hire versus giving people a piece of the publishing, all that kind of stuff. As indie artists, like when I got into the game as an indie artist, all I thought I was supposed to do is just do a recording and put it out there, and everybody already are gonna play it like crazy, not knowing I need a radio person. It is so much that goes into it, and being an
yeah.
artist. And it sounds like that's what you like to share with people that come to your
Mm,
school. But again, I said, man, that knowledge needs to be spread to all people coming into the recording industry.
absolutely.
Now, you mentioned before that you started your own label in 2003. And with that
Hmm.
label, you are one of the founding members of the urban contemporary gospel group God's Image, or GI. You kind of talked a little bit about the history of the group.
Yeah.
Talk a little bit more in depth about how the group came to be.
All right. Well, me and my brother, like I said, I come from a musical family. So when we were like little, I was maybe like 7, Marlon was probably 4. My brother Marlon and my dad, we had a group called Robert Anderson and Sons, because my dad's name was Robert Anderson. I never forget. One time we did this show, this local show. It was called Focus on Black Religion, and we did it like on a Sunday morning live. And then we just went to church afterwards. And I'll never forget, everybody was like, oh, wow, we saw y'all on TV. Y'all was so good. And it kind of made me think, oh, like people actually saw us and they liked us. Wow, this is kind of cool. And it kind of planted something in us, right? So I have to say that because I always have to give my dad his props. And so from there, me and my brother Marlon, right, we were a part of that group, Robert Anderson and Sons. But when we got in high school, um, I met Curtis Langley. I never forget. I wanted to form a group, and me and my brother were already singing. And so I heard about Curtis. It's funny. I heard that a guy named Curtis could sing. I never met him, but I somehow got his number. And so I called him, he wasn't home, and his grandmother answered the phone. I was like, well, listen, my name is Branden Anderson, and can you tell Curtis to call me? Because, I might have said I had a group, and, I heard he can sing. And he called me back.
Wow.
And he ended up coming to the house, and he sung with me and Marlon. And then after that, the rest was history. We did a couple of local things, right? But then a few years later, I heard about another person that could sing, which was Lamont Harris. So if you most people are familiar with our first album called God's Image. Some of the songs were called Get Up, and that is with me, my brother Curtis, and Lamont, the four original members, which I call the official group, God's Image, also known as GI. And so from there, that's how the group started. But that project, it was recorded with my record label. We partnered with Kerry Douglas to put that out back then. And so we did a lot of cool stuff. We were able to do, I remember this show we did called 106 in Gospel. It was a spinoff to 106 in Park. And I don't know, it was just like so crazy. Everything, we had never experienced that much. I walked into Foot Locker one time and our video was playing, and I was like, oh wow, that's us, and it was a great experience. And then from there, you know, we did another project a couple of years later called The Next Dimension. Forever Will Worship was probably the highlight song from there, one of our praise and worship songs. And then we had a song called Lead Us to Truth, which went viral overseas. We don't even know the language at the time. Lamont called me and he said, hey, look at this, look on YouTube. And he made us tell me to go on YouTube, because YouTube wasn't always around. So once we started looking on YouTube, we were like, wait a minute, these people are dancing somewhere in the middle of no part of the world to our song. And it's called, it's like, what do you call it? I'm trying to think, when you just start randomly dancing somewhere in public. I can't think of the word right now, but they were doing this all over across, the part of the country where they were at, and it went viral and everybody was doing it. Flash mob. Yeah, they were doing flash mobs. And we were like, wow, that was the second album. Um, the third album is probably one of our most known ones, which is called Winning. That album was me, Lamont. Now, Marlon and Curtis had taken a break, and here comes Rufus Johnson, who we went to high school with. Me and Lamont I had to talk Lamont off the cliff because nothing much was happening with GI. We hadn't really had I'm talking like a big hit. And he didn't know if he wanted to go on with the group. And I was like, I don't know, but if we don't go on, like, what if we would have just kept going? What if God has something just around the corner? And sure enough, what happened was TD Jakes was coming to town.
Mm-hmm.
And the radio station said, well, hey, can y'all open up for TD Jakes? And I was like, yeah, but I didn't have, it was only me and Lamont, but I said, yeah. So I did it backwards. I said, well, I just said, yeah, now. So I asked Rufus. Rufus went to high school with us. Everybody knows that Rufus can sing. And so I said, Rufus, can you do this date with us? And we did the date, and it went really good. And it got Lamont back off the cliff. And we went into the studio, and we recorded that project, Winning, which had the song Pray and Don't Worry, which is our biggest song to date. And so we're so thankful that we kept going, because that song really put us on the map. And still to this day, it's got so much airplay, and people are singing it, and requesting us for engagements for it. So that's some of the history of GI.
Great history. So you had
Yeah.
all this history with GI, then you wake up one day and you go, you know what? I'm going to do a solo project. And this was around 2021. And then here
Yes.
comes God Did It Again. Tell somebody. So
Yes.
you talk other people off the edge, then here you go doing solo work. How did that happen?
Yes, well, around that was around the pandemic had happened. Of course, we were all inside, and we just felt like, okay, this is a good time maybe for GI to take a break, because Rufus at the time, he had done us a big favor. He came and he sung with the group and recorded, but he had solo aspirations. And so Lamont, he was like, well, that's cool. We can all just take a break. And I was like, okay. But then during that time, I was on, everybody was online during the pandemic because you were inside. So I had gotten on this live from a lady named Prophetess Rose Faust, who I knew. Me and her daughter went to high school together. And somehow I stumbled into her live and she called me out, I think. She said, oh, Branden. She said, I see God rebooting you. I see God rebooting you.
Wow.
But now listen, about not I gotta say this, about 10 years ago, before that, she told me in a service, and she's a real prophet, by the way. Like, I don't know, like, no, I just know that she's the real deal, because when she says stuff, it happens, like, really. But years ago, she said, I see you doing something, but it's not with the group members. And it went over my head, because at the time, I always saw myself in a group.
Mm-hmm.
But then when she said God is getting ready to reboot me, it brought back that memory, and it's kind of like almost like a seatbelt, it buckled. And I was like, oh God, maybe this is what you're talking about. Maybe I'm supposed to do something solo. So I started getting out the boat a little bit, putting my toe in the water. I talked to my producer who had produced Pray No Worry. And I was like, Daniel, I'm thinking about doing some solo stuff. He was like, hey, I'm already ready to go. Let's do it, So sure enough, he came to Richmond, and I had wrote a song, a couple of them actually. And but the one that we started on first, we actually did a song called Still Good, Still God First, which is going to be on my debut album coming out, this year. Um, and but the second day, we started God Did It Again. Now the story with God Did It Again is I wrote it, I sent it to him, he loved it. And because I have this habit of sometimes being a little bit behind time. So the morning I was the second day of the studio, he was in Richmond, Virginia. I was supposed to pick him up. I was running behind. But he said for some reason in those few minutes, he felt guys telling him to take his computer out and just tweak the song a little bit. So when we got to the studio, he played. I was like, what is that? He was like, this God Did It Again. I was like, yo, this is hot. So he had taken my lyrics, my words, my lyrics, and my vocals, but he had done something that he did. And then comes these background vocals that we had you know, said that we were going to work with. And then we all got in that room and God did it again. That's all I could say. Like, we didn't know how my sound would sound as a solo artist. I didn't know, what it was going to sound like. But we was like, okay, we think God is in this. And, we put the song out and it was wonderful. I mean, it just was well received. I mean, I got a call from the Stellar Awards to perform it at the pre-show. People began to just do it on Reels, online. And it went like number one, like several times, like on Sirius M, on Rich Franklin's show. And it was just, I was like, okay, this is really happening. I really have a solo career.
Yeah, it's funny that
So
you said that you're never on time, but you have a song called
yes,
On Time.
I have a
Help me to
song called
understand
On
that.
Time.
Ah,
I know isn't that an oxymoron, right? But it says God is on time. He's on time. But yes, it's so funny because I do actually have a song called On Time. And the story behind that song, it's always funny how these songs come to the surface. Just like God Did It Again was the second day of the studio, because I had put I want to say all of my work into the first one, but it's like you put all your work into that one, and then all of a sudden here comes this other one, and it just blows up out of nowhere. Just like Praying Don't Worry for GI, we were trying to push another song, but then we haphazardly performed Praying Don't Worry at a concert we just decided to add it just because we needed another song. And the radio person said, no, listen, y'all need to do that song. Like, this is y'all song. We're like, really? So we kind of started pushing that one, and then that blew up. We were like, okay. So then with On Time coming back into, closer time, we were into the project at this point, about 5-6 songs in. I had wrote On Time, done about 70% of the song. I don't know if I was that confident in it. And so on a conference call with the producer, I almost didn't bring it up. But then at the very end of the call, I said, well, I think I might have another one, but I'm not that confident in it. So maybe we'll just do it another time. But he was like, no, let me hear it. So then once he heard it, while we was on the phone, he pulled up his equipment in the studio and he starts producing it. And I'm like, oh, wait a minute. This is okay. I see what you're doing. And by the end of the call, like we had like 90% of that song done. And we was like, wow, like we like this song. Like we really like the song. Then I recorded it, and then I tested it out on a few engagements, and the people loved it. It was call and response. And so that's the single that I'm pushing right now.
So that's the single that's at radio. But in my research, I came across another song that you dropped a couple of months ago called Lockdown.
Yes.
Now, my
Yeah.
favorite line, I ain't going nowhere, God, because we on lockdown. I love
Yes.
that. How
Oh, thank you.
did that concept of being locked down with God come out of your brain?
Well, thank you for that. Being that I come from GI, I don't want to say I was trying to stay in a box, but one of the things that I love about my producer is he doesn't keep me in a box, because I feel like, okay, am I going to have a choir sound? Am I going to have because I come from GI, so I love urban music too. He was like, well, just write, just express yourself. We'll worry about how to package it. And so I said, well, on my album, I want a song, like a ballad. And I wanted it to be soulful. And so he played me this track and I loved it. And so we wrote it together. And my producer, I think that we started writing it together. And I forget who came up with it, maybe me, maybe him. But we was like, you're my rock, talking about, Jesus. Because your love is so good, we won't stop. So I'm gonna follow you, because I have decided to follow Jesus. And then, but we still did, like you said, with I ain't going nowhere, we on lockdown. We were like, oh snap, that's kind of hot.
I
Yeah, we
love
was
that
like,
line.
oh, thank you, thank you. Yeah, we were like, okay, this is pretty good.
Yeah. I've,
Yeah,
well, I've heard wrapped up, tied up, tangled up, but God, we ain't going nowhere. We on lockdown.
yeah.
So
Yeah,
what's
man. So
what's
that
next for Branden Anderson?
all right. So what's next for me? I am actually working on actually putting out the full album, which will probably be out, I would say late summer, maybe early fall. I'm excited for everybody to hear it, because you guys have heard about 3 songs at this point. God Did It Again, On Time, Lockdown. But I've recorded about 10 songs, 11 songs. So I'm just excited for everybody to hear it. Um, and, that's pretty much what I'm really planning for at this point, the full album release.
Wow. So definitely we're looking forward to that album dropping. To the
Yeah,
album, we still call them albums now?
so
Yeah.
much. It depends.
Collection of songs coming out later this year. So how can
Yeah.
people follow you on social media? How can they reach you? How can they contact you? How can they get your music?
All right. So my site, brandenanderson.com. That's BRANDEN. Um, brandenanderson.com. On Instagram and Facebook, it's official Branden Anderson. Um, there should be booking information, on those pages. And that's the best way. On YouTube, you can look up Branden Anderson. You'll find, a few of my videos, and that's pretty much how you can contact me.
Man, I have enjoyed this conversation. Before we wrap up, I want you to speak to someone that's in high school that has a love for gospel music. Maybe what they're doing is not as well accepted because they're
Mm.
doing things that are kind of out the box. Encourage that young person.
Wow. I would say that God takes the unusual to make it extraordinary. And what I mean by that is when we came out with our first song, Get Up, I remember people were kind of like, who are those kids dancing in the street or get up and all this hippity hop? You know, they would just call it all this stuff back then. But we were like, we don't feel like we're like, isn't contemporary happening right now? You know, but you know, some people just felt like, oh, you know, who are these urban cats? You know, but we didn't change. You know, we didn't try to hurry up and become traditional. We just felt like this is who we were, and eventually it paid off for us. You know, praying on worry happened. So what I would say is, man, there is so much value in authenticity. Um, you know, we have said it over and over again. Kirk Franklin is one of the greatest, right, of all time, but we don't need another Kirk Franklin.
Right.
Um, Lecrae is one of the greatest rappers, you know, of all time, but we don't need another Lecrae. So, but there are so many um artists, you know, for example, there's we don't need another Yolanda. There will be other female vocalists, of course, but everybody's different. You know, it's almost like everybody has their own fingerprint. And it's so funny. I just read this. You know, God gave us all our own individual fingerprints so that we can leave a unique imprint in the world.
Wow.
And so you can't do that if you're trying to sound like everybody else or try to be the next. Nobody. We want the original. That's what you know. When people, if you think about anybody that ever came along that was great, it was a little bit of pushback. You know, even if you studied music history from the Hawkins or Happy Day, they were like, wait a minute, what's all this contemporary? Or, you know, Kirk Franklin, of course, you know, when he became radical, or you know, I would say don't be afraid to be yourself. That is how you stand out, being yourself. And be consistent. Like there are going to be some engagements where people stand up and support you, and there are going to be some engagements where people just sit there and look at you. But guess what? You're supposed to do the same thing every time. I'm sure you've heard this said, or maybe not, but you're always supposed to perform the same room that has 50 people in it, perform like it was 5,000 in it. Because guess what? It's always an audience of one. If you, you know, if of course if you are a gospel artist, it's always an audience of one. Um, and you never know the impact. I always tell people this: one of the greatest rewards we could ever receive is, I remember we had a song called Temptation, GI did, and we were looking through the comments on YouTube, and one of the comments said, man, you guys saved my life. I was considering suicide, but
Wow.
you know, I guess they came across the song. And so you got to think about it. You know, God gave us gifts, and I always say that gifts are not meant to be not on, you know, who wants a gift on Christmas and you can't open it. You open up your gifts and you share your gifts. And you mean to tell me that God gives us gifts and we're not going to use them? Why? Because we don't know what people would think. We're scared of. Come on, like today we're in crazy times. People need light,
Right.
and we have the light. You know, we need to carry the light wherever we go because it's that serious. Your gift could literally save somebody's life. So I would say, don't hold back, don't give up. One of my favorite scriptures of all time, Galatians 6:9. Let us not grow weary while doing good, for in due season we shall reap if we faint not. And I always say that about GI. Our due season came around 2017 with Pray and Don't Worry, but we started in 1998. So, you know, hey, that was about almost 20 years, give or take. But look at what God did, and enjoy the journey. I will say that. Don't be in a rush to go number one. Like, enjoy the journey. Like, we enjoyed sometimes getting in the van and driving 3 hours to an engagement and enjoying the trip, and then getting there and meeting the people and having fellowship and coming back. You know, it wasn't about going platinum on that trip. It was just about enjoying it. We have so many memories. Enjoy the journey. So those would be a few things that I would say.
Man, again, I have enjoyed speaking with you, Branden. Again, everybody, don't forget to check out Branden Anderson, his latest single, On Time, Lockdown, God Did It Again, Tell Somebody, the music from GI, and get ready for his full project coming out later this year. I always like to close by saying this: remember to work like you don't need the money, love like you've never been hurt, and dance like no one's watching you. God bless until we have an opportunity to meet again.
Wow. Thank you so much, Carl, for having me. I really enjoyed this time.
My pleasure.
The Carl B. Phillips Show.
Thank you for listening to the Carl B. Phillips Show. For more information, go to carlbphillips.com.
The Carl B. Phillips Show.
Follow Carl B. Phillips on Instagram so we can stay in contact with each other.